while going through this web tool. Now, in my carbon neutrality talk, what I shall share one is we have formed at Indian Chemical Council Carbon Neutrality Task Force. So last year we have formed, and why we have formed? Because nowadays, today if you see, carbon neutrality has become very, very important aspect. So when you think to start production, then the first chemical industry have issue with the environment clearance. You have to go to apply to Ministry of Environment Forest, take the environment clearance, and that is a big task for the chemical industry. Several delay also happens, so several kind of suggestions are also coming, and at Indian Chemical Council we are discussing with the MOEF that how faster environment clearance can be given. But when you go for the environment clearance, then nowadays in expert appraisal committee, this carbon neutrality task happen. They ask the roadmap, that show us the roadmap, how you become the carbon neutral going forward. Also, when you start attracting the investors, then nowadays investors are also asking several questions regarding carbon neutrality. And my experience at UPL is that nowadays my 50% time goes to pursue and discuss with our investor, especially the foreign investor, who always used to talk that how you will achieve carbon neutrality, what is your carbon neutrality roadmap, where is TCFD report, where is your science-based target, where is your sustainability target. So carbon neutrality nowadays is become very important for the investor also. Now the third part is the talent attraction. So I happens to be in the interview board of taking interview of various senior persons. And I always found that even the senior persons are also asking the question that what is the plan of your company regarding carbon neutrality. And nowadays the people love to work with the company who have a very clear-cut roadmap toward the carbon neutrality, and they have the TCFD report to mitigate the climate change. And the last part is, when you are sending your product to the, especially the foreign countries, then you may have heard European carbon border tax. And from this year, it has become mandatory in the Europe. And European carbon border tax, it's different things are there, but the summary I can tell you, when your product goes to the border of Europe, they ask that how much carbon associated with your product. And they try to see that the same product that get manufactured at Europe, how much average carbon footprint is there. And whatever the difference of carbon associated with your product, they will impose the tax. So your product will become costly if you have a more carbon emission. And how they used to check? They ask the simple thing, LCA, life cycle assessment. Send the life cycle assessment, and through life cycle assessment, we able to see that how much carbon associated with your product. So this is also important for the chemical industry, that start thinking to develop in-house capability to do the LCA, life cycle assessment. And nowadays, from Europe, a lot of customers are asking LCA. But going forward, I think from almost all countries it will be asked. And it is also very good that when we are making certain product, then we should know that how the carbon emission is coming, and then we can change in the process. We can improve the product also such that it should emit less carbon emission. So LCA is very important. And at this moment of time, two softwares are there. One is SimaPro and another is Gabi. So we must make our in-house capability regarding the LCA. Now going forward to my presentation, carbon neutrality. So first, you may see here, present carbon emission reporting scenario. But before this, I think go to the first one. Yes. This is about the UPL. So from here I will start. Just I want to share a case study of UPL. Globally, I used to head UPL Environment and Sustainability. Go to the next one. So you can see the performance, and I will not bore you, just one pager, then I will move on the topic. And why I want to share this, because for sustainability and carbon neutrality, these things are very important for any company to show year over year. So at UPL in 2019-20, we set our baseline for the water, carbon, and waste. So we say environment footprint. And why 1920? Because in 1920, we did one important acquisition, Arista, and that was a $4.5 billion acquisition. So why we set 1920 as a baseline. And we set target in our organization that going forward, we will reduce the environment footprint. First, we set a short-term target that by 2025, from 2020 baseline, in 5 years of time, we will reduce 25% carbon, 25% waste, and 20% water. That is the target, a short-term target. And our mid-term target is science-based target. So we have science-based target approved. And as per that target, we have set 63% reduction of carbon emission from 2035. And our long-term target is carbon neutrality. And at UPL, we have set 2040 as a year for the carbon neutrality. Now you can see that from 1920 baseline, 2025 target is 25% reduction, water, waste, carbon. Water is 20% only. You can see that still 2 year time is there, but we have exceed the target, and 40% we have reduced the water, 21% carbon emission reduction happen, and 57% waste reduction happen. And another thing is the science-based target. So that is also very important for the chemical industry. We must set our target as per science-based, and we must have to get approved from the SBTi. SBTi is a UN-led organization at international level, and they used to validate and approve the science-based target. At UPL last year, we get approval from the SBTi. Another important point is the TCFD. So TCFD report is very important because various climate change and events are coming. So we have to see that what all opportunity and risk are there due to climate change. And we must have a report of organization where we should try to outline that how the organization will mitigate the climate change risk. And that is the TCFD report. Also, the International Rating Agency. You can see here DJSI, Sustainalytics, and also FTSE Russell. These are the very important international rating agency, and we must get a very good rating from these agency. So that is also very important. At UPL, we have rated #1 among agrochemicals globally last year by all these 3 rating agencies. And a part of this, there are, one is the CEO water mandate. That is very important for the chemical industry. That comes from the United Nations Global Compact. Also, United Nations Global Compact 10 basic principles are very important for us, and we have to comply. And the third part is WBCSD, World Business Council for Sustainable Development. They have set zero wastewater target, and that is also very important for almost all chemical companies to comply with that. So this is about the UPL performance last year. Go through the next one. Now this is ICC Carbon Neutrality Task Force. So last year we have constituted, 7-member committee we have constituted, and our main focus is, first focus is to build awareness toward the carbon neutrality. So we are organizing several awareness sessions and like sustainability conclave or these kind of talk, we able to bring the awareness regarding carbon neutrality. Then also we are discussing what all should be the supportive policy for the carbon chemical industry to achieve the carbon neutrality. So their work is going on. And the last part is to make the roadmap for the Indian chemical companies to achieve the carbon neutrality. So there also we are working, and very soon at Indian Chemical Council, we will come out with the carbon neutrality roadmap for the chemical industry. So at this moment, you can see the action area. Our action area is, one is we are in process of collecting the data about the sustainability reporting, because that is very important for the member companies to release the sustainability report in the public domain. Also, Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions are very important, and you may have seen through the webtool which has been developed at ICC. Our aim is to collect the all information, Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions. And then science-based target, we will continue to help the member companies, and ICC will promote to have the science-based target for the chemical industries. TCFD report is also very important, and then the carbon neutrality. So carbon neutrality have two scenarios. One is the Paris Agreement on climate change. So as per Paris Agreement on climate change, expectation is 2050. We must achieve before 2050 carbon neutrality. And if you see India government commitment, then India government has committed 2070 as a carbon neutrality. So we can follow, I think we should first focus on the Paris Agreement on climate change, and we must try to achieve the carbon neutrality before 2050. Go to the next. Now here, as I told you that we are trying to make some database at Indian Chemical Council, and we are in process of understanding that where our member companies are today standing. And when we talk carbon neutrality, then we must have to see, one is that how much company have sustainability reporting and assurance from the third party. Also, how many member companies have a Scope 3 emission calculation in place. How many have science-based target set. How many have released TCFD report, and how many companies have committed carbon neutrality in the public domain. And you can see here, we have done one assessment at the Indian Chemical Council only for the responsible care member company. Because as a whole, if you talk all the members, then the number will be very high, and we have not done the survey exactly. But responsible care logo holder, they are approximately 80 companies at ICC, maybe 2-3 here or there, I don't know exact right now. So we have done the assessment at ICC, and what we found that among all responsible care logo holders company, only 44% have sustainability report in the public domain. And if you see a scope 3 emission, then only 31% responsible care logo holder company have a scope 3 emission calculation in place. And science-based target, if you see, then only 15% responsible care logo holder company have science-based target approved by the SBTi. And TCFD reporting, only 14% responsible care company used to do. And the carbon neutrality in public domain, the carbon neutrality commitment, only 14% responsible care company have committed. So we have to increase this number. And going forward, our expectation is that the responsible care companies, they should qualify 100%, all these criteria going forward. And then only we can say that they are the responsible care in a true spirit. So going forward, year over year, from Indian Chemical Council, our wish is that let this figure go on increasing, and all these 5 parameters we must achieve 100%. And our wish is not only for the responsible care company. We want that all the member of Indian Chemical Council, they should qualify into this. But let us see going forward how we progressed. Now, I have also compared Nifty 50 company. And Nifty 50 companies are India top 50 listed company. And in that, only chemical companies are not there. Very few chemical companies are there in Nifty 50. All are the bank, IT, and for them, these all calculation and the reporting is easy job. But even if you see Nifty 50, top 50 listed company, then you can see how they are today placed. Sustainability reporting, 68% Nifty 50 companies today have in the public domain sustainability reporting. 44% have a scope 3 emission calculation in place. 12% have science-based target in place. TCFD report, 24%. And the 10% Nifty 50 companies have only committed carbon neutrality. So I think where we are as a chemical industry from a responsible care, our position is not bad if we consider the Nifty 50 company, but let's see going forward how we can progress on all these parameters more and more. Go to the next one. So now I shall move fast because the time is less and lunch will be there. So here is a scope 1, a scope 2, a scope 3 emission. And just I want to give you flavor that these emissions are very important and we must have to calculate a scope 1, a scope 2, a scope 3 emissions. The summary is that a scope 1 emissions are those emissions which happens within our premises. So we used to produce and we used to use the energy that called a scope 1 emission. A scope 2 emissions are those emissions where we are using the energy at our premises but getting produced outside, like grid electricity. That is a scope 2 emission. And a scope 3 emission is a very broader category. There are 15 categories and we have to track all those. Most prominent in chemical industry is the raw material which we use to source. So capital, good and services which we used to take. So that constitute maximum on a scope 3 emission. Also the distribution, logistic, business travel, those also comes under a scope 3 emissions. Go to the next. This is about science-based target. So you can see here science-based target, the mainly at international level, SBTi. SBTi is a organization who used to validate and approve the science-based target. And in SBTi, the partner organizations are CDP, United Nations Global Compact, and WRI and WWF. And they have a tool, and they used to see your calculation. They used to validate the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions, and then set the science-based target. At UPL, we have done, last year we have completed the activity. And my experience is the very important and complicated part is scope 3 emission. And that you have to calculate, and they used to validate that calculation. So there you should be very, very clear with the calculation that you are able to prove that yes, all the scope 3 emissions have been calculated very well. And then we have to follow the trajectory of 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius. Two options are there, and on any trajectory we have to set our science-based target, and then the validation and approvals comes from the SBTi. Go to the next. So this is the entire process of setting science-based target. First, you have to send a commitment letter to the SBTi that yes, we want to set the science-based target. So commitment is the first part. Then you have to develop all the calculation, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emission, all the calculation organization have to do. Then you have to submit to the SBTi all the calculation, and then they will validate it. And once they will approve the science-based target, then you can communicate and disclose. So these all are the process to set the science-based target. Next one. Now, coming to the carbon neutrality, I will not go much more deeper because we don't have much more time, and on carbon neutrality we need several hours of talk. But what I will share, only 2 slides I shall share today with you. One is the India Decarbonization Roadmap, and then I shall share one case study of UPL that how UPL have decarbonization roadmap. And I think these 2 data will give you certain flavor and help you also to understand the carbon neutrality. Now this is the source of this data, which I am going to show India Decarbonization Roadmap. Recently, McKinsey has released the report, that is the Decarbonizing India. So last year, 2022, October month, McKinsey has released, and from there I have taken this data. So what McKinsey report is saying that we have 2 scenarios in India to achieve the carbon neutrality. One is our Prime Minister has announced 2070 as a year of carbon neutrality for India. So one scenario is 2070. And the second scenario is the Paris Agreement on climate change. Paris Agreement on climate change want that the carbon neutrality must be achieved by 2050. So one scenario is 2050, another scenario is 2070. And in this report, they have summarized that if you want to achieve carbon neutrality by 2070, then we required in India approximately 2.5 trillion US dollar investment by 2050. So, and if we want to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, then by 2050 we need 3.7 trillion US dollar investment. So 3.7 trillion dollar, why? 3.8 trillion dollar investment required to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. And if we want by 2070, then up to 2050, we require 2.5 trillion US dollar. So what here you can see, the summary of this data is this, that a huge investment is going to come in the renewable energy, transportation sector, and also the energy storage sector. So that is the one thing. And second thing is that today our economy, India economy, is a coal-based economy, and you can see 74% our energy are based on coal, And going forward, when we want to make it a zero, then we have to work a lot of work on the renewable and new source of energy. So this is just a flavor of data that how much investment and how we have to achieve in the India. This is one case study of UPL Decarbonization Roadmap. So at UPL, we have made the decarbonization roadmap to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2040. And you can see the year over year, first base year, we have presented that at this moment, what is energy mix in base year 2020. And this is a global UPL report. So you can see our dependency in 2020 was 77% on the coal. And then we have made a roadmap that by 2025, how we will reduce the all fossil fuels and how we will increase our share in the renewable energy. And then 2035, that is our science-based target. And then 2040, carbon neutrality. So various source of energy, if you see, then there are certain fossil fuels based source of energy, and there are certain renewable source of energy. And our path is that going forward, we will reduce the fossil fuel and we will add more and more new and renewable source of energy, and we will achieve the carbon neutrality by 2040. So this is about the overall. Also, where our challenge is, I am heading globally UPL, and I don't see any challenge. Go to the first one. I don't see any challenge in a scope 1, a scope 2, because you see nearly 1 million metric ton emission of UPL, entire UPL is there. And I don't see any challenge of achieving carbon neutrality by 2040 at UPL. Where our challenge is on a scope 3 emission. And a scope 3 emission is not fully in our control, because we have 5,000 vendors who supply the raw material. So 5,000 supplier base, and their achieve the carbon neutrality, this is a uphill task, and we are working a lot of things on the sustainable procurement. We have made our sustainable procurement policy. We are engaging our suppliers, and we are going to coming days several strategy. One strategy we are thinking that we should give the target to our procurement department that have more and more those suppliers who have already set the science-based target. So right now, from Environment Sustainability Department, I am in process of first assessing that out of 5,000 suppliers, how much percentage are there who have already science-based target. Then we will set the target within our organization. Let's have the supplier more and more who have the science-based target, because if they have science-based target, so they will achieve the carbon neutrality, so we can also achieve faster. A part of this, we are also thinking to negotiate green power purchase agreement, where to a small and medium scale supplier we can provide. So several talks, several discussion going on, but my experience is that a scope 3 emission, that is the challenging task. And in chemical industry, if you see the split of a scope 1, a scope 2, a scope 3 emission, then broadly, maybe some to 5% here or there. In chemical industry, 75% emission come from the scope 3, 20% comes from the scope 1, and 5% from the scope 2. So 75% emission is from the scope 3, and so why a scope 3 emission is a very challenge for the chemical industry. Now go to the next. Okay. Okay, so I think in the interest of time, I shall conclude within 1 minute of time. So I have 2-3 slides, but I will not go through all this. What I want to say at last, that yes, chemical industry have to work a lot to achieve the carbon neutrality. We are working, and if you see the progress day by day, the good progress is coming from the chemical industry. But at the same time, our regulators, our request is that our regulators like Ministry of Environment, Forest and the other government regulatory agency, they also have to give thought that how they can support the chemical industry to achieve the carbon neutrality. And some of the suggestion from time to time from the Indian Chemical Council, we are suggesting to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and other regulatory bodies. One thing is on deep sea discharge. So on deep sea discharge, what we are saying that our deep sea discharge system, especially in the Gujarat, Bharuch, Ankleshwar, Panoli area, it is a world-class system. And if you compare our deep sea discharge system, it is comparable with the US deep sea discharge system. But in US, they have US EPA norm where they allow to discharge 4,000 ppm COD into deep sea discharge system, and it doesn't impact the environment. In our country, we don't have a separate norm for the deep sea discharge. Still the ministry is following up the river discharge norm, and still they are restricting to 250 ppm COD discharge. And I think what happens because of that, when you have 250 ppm COD discharge norm, then you have to use more and more energy and more carbon emission happen. So it is not in the interest of environment. Other part is zero liquid discharge. So those areas who are coastal area, deep sea discharge facilities are available. We should not make chemical industry mandatory that they should follow the ZLD norm. Today what we have found that the new environment clearance which is coming for the chemical industry, the Ministry of Environment is putting condition that you must have to follow zero liquid discharge. And zero liquid discharge associated with more carbon emission, more hazardous waste going to the landfill sites. So that is not an environment friendly option. And so why we are requesting that let's have amendment in the government regulations also, and let's see that all the norms get aligned with the international norms, and by that way also we can achieve faster carbon neutrality. So I think I shall summarize my talk. Go to the last one. Yes. So the summary of my talk is that to achieve carbon neutrality, we have to work on 3 fronts. One is targeting and reporting. So we must have to set the science-based target. We must have to report in the public domain that how we are progressing to reduce our environment footprint. Second is energy mix change. We must have to change the energy mix from fossil fuels to renewable source of energy. And third is regulatory reform is also required, and that is also important, and government have to think that what kind of reform they should bring such that the chemical industry can achieve faster carbon neutrality. So with that, I shall conclude my talk. Thank you. Thank you for.
Thank you very much, sir, for your enlightened speech and on the responsible care as well as on the carbon neutrality. Hope we will work on the carbon neutrality in the Indian chemical industry and more. There will be a lot of questions in audience, but I will encourage everybody to catch Dr. Chaubey during the lunch session. Now it's time to thank him. I will request Dr. Sahas Naman, to our editor of Chemical News and RC auditor, to give a memento of thanks to the Dr. Mritunjay Chaubey. Dr. Sahas Naman, sir, please give the mementos. From that side. Thank you, sir. So now we'll break for the lunch.